To order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary Ellen's on. Okay, we got a first agenda item. Is that me? Who's that you? Okay, good. Okay, first agenda item is the contract license and the the irrigation fee. I guess, Mary Ellen, the history is that we charge the irrigation license separate from the contractor license.
Yes, in order to have an irrigation contractor license, you first have to get a home improvement contractor's license. And once you have the home improvement license, then you can apply for the irrigation contractor license. The irrigation contractors have to have certain certifications that just not anyone can be an irrigation contractor. And currently, right now, we have maybe about 10 active irrigation contractors, but most of those contractors may only have 1 or 2 customers on the island. As you know, SNL has left. Briarcliff is not taking any more new customers, and Sound Shore is picking up some of them, but sporadically, each of the other might pick up 1 or 2 more, but some of them only have 1 customer they service.
So I think the good news there is that they're realizing that Shelter Island is not irrigation friendly. But I think the issue really is, well, the way I thought of it was that, when we raised the contractor's fee, that was across the board. I didn't think we wanted to hit the irrigation guys twice.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that because like I said, some of these guys, they won't come back here for $500 a year to have a license. And according to the ordinance, the contractor has to fill out page 3. And if none of the contractors want to come back, how are we going to get that page 3 filled out by these guys?
Yeah, well, I would say give them the normal contractor's license, add whatever irrigation, information you needed to theirs specifically, and same fee.
So what we were doing was $250 for the contractor license now, and $100 was the irrigation contractor license. So I was about to send out my notices to renew for the $100 because some of them have already paid the $250. So this question was, are we keeping that at $100? Or are we just not going to charge them the second fee, or are we going to raise that fee?
My recommendation would be don't charge it. We're charging them the $250 for the license, contractor's license. So but I don't know what everybody else wants.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so they no longer need a specified irrigation contractor license.
Well, but you want the information, just like the landscapers have to put on if they have the credentials to for herbicides. You want the same thing as BJ said, an endorsement that they, whatever you require for their license for the irrigation.
Yes, one of the things that we require is that they have to either have a restricted plumber's license or work under a restricted plumber. And so this way, not anyone who mows lawns can also do irrigation.
Right, exactly.
So
Stephen?
Just so you know, currently we have about 34 cisterns and 84 grandfathered systems.
84.
So,
And
Really down, huh?
systems.
yeah, several people decided to give it up. Other people might skip a year because you're allowed to skip 1 year. And more people are starting to get the cisterns.
Okay. Stephen?
Yeah, we have to look at this code. It's amorphous at best regarding the procedures and the requirements to become a licensed irrigation contractor. However, it does say any person signing the above certifications in connection with a irrigation permit shall be a licensed irrigation contractor. And there's 3 criteria. They have a home improvement contractor license. They certify that all business personnel dealing with irrigation have read and understand the town code and submit information as to the financial responsibility and character of the applicant. So that's all I see that you need to do above and beyond the home improvement contractor's license, which again, you have the redundancy of having the home improvement contractor license. So I think that we need to look at this,
Okay.
but I don't see anything in the code that requires a fee. So there's nothing that we're waiving as far as
Mhm.
code requirement.
Mhm.
So I believe if it was done by a resolution, but I don't even know if there is a resolution
Okay.
to look for that. If it was done by resolution setting the fee, we would have to issue another resolution. Basically, changing that policy. If it's an internal policy that was just created, then there's nothing that needs to be done by the board to
Okay.
stop charging that.
So Mary Ellen, as long as they have the contractor's license, they don't need the second license. They just
Okay.
need to fill out proper paperwork.
All right, that's fine. That'll
Okay.
save me some extra work. Okay,
Thanks, Mary Ellen.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next on the list is Suffolk County Water Authority. We're gonna continue our, hopefully finalize our discussion on the lease to operate West Neck Water. Stephen, you want to give us a quick update before we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a proposed lease. It's gone through a couple of iterations. We've put next to the final version up on the website. There was a couple of changes just recently made, and I'll just point them out right now. One is in section 2.1. Suffolk County Water Authority has agreed to diligently pursue applicable grants that may be used for the reduction of the costs associated with capital improvements. So now that is language provided in the lease. Also, if you look at section 5.4, the Suffolk County Water Authority, notwithstanding the Suffolk County Water Authority's rules and regulations, the authority shall not allow the filling of water trucks from district wells. Because there was a question that was raised, of course, within the lease, it says you can't truck water or you can't take water off island, but it didn't say internally on the island. whether you-
Right.
Like, again, for example, a water truck being filled up to fill up a pool somewhere
Yeah.
on the island.
Mhm.
Now that's prohibited. There will be no filling of water trucks. So those are the two. So what was posted online is the final version, but for those 2 changes. All right, so again, to start again, with the Suffolk County Water Authority has offered to enter into a lease with the town to take over the operations of the existing town-run West Neck Water District, which currently services approximately 70 properties. The Suffolk County Water Authority, as you are aware, is a public benefit corporation. It is not a private for-profit business. It was formed in 1937 by the then Suffolk County Board of Supervisors and subsequently codified in New York State Public Authorities Law, Title IV. It was charged with benefiting the residents of Suffolk County by improving their health, welfare, and prosperity by performing the essential governmental function of the provision of safe water to the residents of the county. They were granted very broad powers to effectuate that mandate. The power to lease, purchase, construct on, and condemn properties countywide in order to provide water. Except that power was limited in one specific instance, where a town operated a water system. Only in this situation, the authority had to ask for consent to operate. Here, they're asking for that consent through the subject lease. And I'm sure Joe will expound on why it's necessary that we move on and allow the Suffolk County Water Authority to take over. A few of the main provisions of the lease are the term is 40 years, which is the statutory limit for the Water Authority to lease anything. However, the town can terminate at any time, albeit with the requirement to repay any expenditures made by the authority. A condition precedent to the authority leasing the district, however, is that $1.7 million in capital improvements be made to bring the district up to snuff. And that's to include the replacement of the distribution system, installation of meters, vaults, the construction of well number 7, and the reconfiguration of the electric system. The authority will cover this expenditure initially, but it must be repaid over 25 years. Therefore, the authority's fee for operating the district under this lease will be the equivalent of the capital improvement surcharge coupled with the customer rates and charges collected. Pursuant to the terms of the lease, the authority shall diligently pursue grants to offset the costs associated with the capital improvements, as I referenced earlier. Any other improvements other than the capital improvements shall be at the authority's own expense, and they will give 30 days notice to the town prior to making them, along with the cost estimates. At the end of the lease, if the town decides to take over the district, the town will have to purchase those improvements. As to expansion, pursuant to the terms of the lease, the authority shall be able to offer water service to new customers, but that's only if the district currently has the capacity to absorb them. Any new customers which require additional capacity or another well can only be added upon 60 days' notice and in consultation with the town. Also, only at the town's option and upon consent may town lands be sites for future wells. Let me just reiterate that. It's only at the town's option and upon consent. So they don't have an unfettered right to use town lands for future wells. And also, whatever town properties we do have, if they're encumbered by covenants and restrictions that would prohibit it, it's a non-starter anyway. So for instance, certain CPF properties that we own, if they are encumbered, you can't even explore that. And lastly, as I referenced earlier, the water generated in the district will stay in the district as the filling of water trucks is prohibited. So that's just really a brief
Okay.
overview of the main points. of the
And
lease.
we asked for written comments, and we have one from Lori Beard Raymond. But before we start addressing that, the only issue I have, Joe Piconi, it's not really an issue. We talked about it. I don't know, resolved it. The term wells, we have wells, we have new supply wells, and then the one that caught my eye was Suffolk County Water shall not transport or allow the transport of water from any drinking water wells. That's the only place we refer to wells as drinking water wells. I want to make sure it's not a way to get around transporting water.
Now, I don't know if you want to change the language to say drinking water wells throughout the document.
Or
Steve, you
just,
could probably
or
weigh
just
in on
water,
that.
or take the word drinking out.
Right. One
Many
way or the
wells,
other.
period. Yeah. That was it. That's all. Okay, so, Joe Fenora, how do you want to do, the written concerns we had? You want to go down the list, or you want to?
I would,
Why is this property being leased?
Well, I've addressed some of the concerns regarding the lease already.
Okay.
So we've done that already. I don't know, I sent the document to Joe Piconi if he
Okay.
has any comments on the others. And also, I'd like to ask Joe Fenora about, just to bring us up to date with the map, because that was raised.
Okay.
That There could be some issue with the map. So maybe if Joe wants to start with the map, and then we can turn it over to Mr. Piconi regarding any other comments.
Joe Piconi and I spoke yesterday about Exhibit A, which is the map that is referenced in the contract. And we spoke extensively about the map detailing, to the best of their knowledge, in cooperation with other reference documents we've sent. The map represents the approximate location of assets and infrastructure like mains and wells, as well as a loose understanding of the existing boundaries of the system service. The map is intended to be a reference point only. Its accuracy is based purely off of the reference documents we've received and built off of. The map is not necessarily as what's filed with the appropriate regulatory agencies. We understand that there are a number of details that are inaccurate of the map pertaining to previous subdivisions, new service extensions that have been made, well placements, etc. It is the position of Suffolk County Water Authority, and Joe Piconi can elaborate on this if he sees it necessary, that they will make those modifications sort of one final time upon the completion of the agreement with the respective regulatory agencies, but that the map shown in Exhibit A at this point represents our understanding of the system as it stands, and that the details should not be taken with a precision that's not suitable for the information we had to build it with. So all of those final changes will be made as required once we have an executed lease and we can incorporate outstanding comments from the New York State DEC.
Yeah, and pretty much what Joe said, I agree with. The purpose of the map from our perspective was to just make sure that we have all the facilities located, you know, the wells, the pump house, the water mains. So we're most interested in what the assets are of the water system, and they are depicted on the map, you know, to the best of what we know. Obviously, all of this stuff is buried, and, you know, things may be different, obviously, than what they appear on the map. But that map, to the best of my knowledge, depicts all of the facilities that constitute the West Neck water system.
Okay.
Good.
Anybody have anything?
No.
Lisa, did you want to say anything?
No, I.
You have to just come up here, please.
I think the question of the map was that there was one piece on the southwestern corner of it that was inaccurate. But I understand from what you're saying, Joe Picorni, that this is used as a reference. It's we got in trouble before from the DEC because the map was incorrect and it didn't incorporate lines, or the map was just incorrect.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we're so focused, or at least some people are so focused on making sure that this map is correct.
Yeah, no, I'm, you know, one of the first things I have to do when and if we go forward with this agreement is to petition the DEC to change the map. Because when the engineer applied for a permit for the wells across the street, actually for well number 4, the DEC was consolidating all the permits into one permit. This is something they've been doing lately. And they saw that 5 and 6 were across the street and in an area on the golf course that's not on the map right now. The golf course is not included as part of the district. So the district, the DEC came back and said, you've got to amend the map. So in order to permit well number 4, we've got to amend the map for wells 5 and 6, if that makes any sense. So, but that'll be one of the first things that we'll be doing. And of course, when number 7 goes in, it's going to have to be amended also.
I'd like to stress at this time that after the agreement is signed, that will be Suffolk County Water Authority's responsibility.
Yes.
And any dialogue, any violation, anything goes to you guys.
Yes, it
and
does.
You will solve that problem.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I sense some relief.
So I'm Andrew Chapman, and I've worked with Lisa and Steve and so forth in terms of putting this contract together. I'm in favor of this contract. I think there are three things which are a given. One, the system needs upgrades. 2, the system needs professional management. And 3, Suffolk County Water is totally competent to do all that. There are a couple of other issues that I think need to be put on the table. They still get me to yes. And one is expectations of future rates. If I think you have to believe going forward to support this contract, that the per customer cost of upgrades for Suffolk County Water Authority's entire system divided by the number of customers across its entire system is less than the per customer cost of just doing upgrades in West Neck in the Westneck system divided by its 7 customers. In other words, that economies of scale that the Suffolk County Water Authority system provides when you're looking at future treatment expense and all of that, will yield a lower rate path for the Westneck customers than if they were just on their own. I believe that. But the town needs to believe that. And I think by supporting this lease, you do believe that. But as somebody who's worked in the water utility industry for my entire career, I believe that. And so economically, I think this is a good thing for the county, for the town to do, and for the Westneck customers to do. The second matter that we've talked about a lot in our discussions on this contract is extensions of either the Westneck system or the Suffolk County Water Authority providing service to other parts of the island. And the town attorney said that, look, the authority has broad power to do this. And that extension of the system has potential impacts for land use. It has potential impacts for management of the aquifer and so forth. The 60-day notice provision that the town attorney referenced, notice and consultation provision that the town attorney referenced, is a bit of a challenge to the town. And it's an opportunity for the town to participate and engage on those questions in the future. And I think it's important for the town to engage. It's not mandatory, but I certainly think it's important for the town to engage. The Water Advisory Committee discussed this at its meeting yesterday and is willing to engage and is willing to lead those discussions. So I think this contract provides an opportunity for that to happen. And I think that's important for the future of the town and the management of its aquifer. And for all of those reasons, I support this. I think it's a really good contract, and I certainly give Lisa a lot of kudos for leading the board and the customer base to this
Right.
point. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Joe Piconi, do you have anything else?
No, I mean, I just wanted to echo Andrew's comments. I mean, I appreciate your support, Andrew. And I think that he hit the nail on the head. You know, you have to look at this and you have to realize that you are not just going to be 70 customers alone now. You have another 400,000 customers in the Suffolk County Water Authority that you're involved with. And because of that, there are massive economies of scale. And so, you know, the marginal cost for us to supply another 70 customers and operate this system is very small when compared to the rest of our system. And you guys are the beneficiaries of that. So I'm glad to see that you recognize that, Andrew, and I appreciate that you enunciated that.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So Stephen, is the next point, we set a hearing to approve the contract, or do we?
No, there's no hearing. It's just by a
Okay.
resolution.
Okay,
So
Bob, we're gonna hold the comments till the end, okay? Andrew and Lisa are involved in all the
well,
negotiations.
he's a member of the WAC and she's
Yeah.
a member of West Nile.
They were- that's what I'm saying, they've been
Town
involved.
office.
Right, right.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, so we don't need, so we can adopt it on the next town board
There could be a
meeting?
resolution issued
To sign it.
authorizing you to sign it.
Okay,
At the next town board meeting, if you so choose. I just have a couple questions for Mr. Pokorny. Miss Beer Raymond, she has some questions regarding classification. Can you just resolve that? Like, what is the classification for, as far as rates? Because it was, you know, she put in there that, you know, they're going to be treated akin to Fire Island, but there's different classifications for Fire Island. So can you just clarify that?
Yeah, so there is a conflict that she pointed out, and I appreciate what she's talking about. You know, when we established the rates on Shelter Island, we used the Fire Island rate, and that is the rate that we are proposing here. So the section of the rules and regulations that point to Fire Island, you know, that the particular issue that she talked about with extensions and whatnot, we don't really do extensions on Fire Island. But we probably will if we are able to extend the system in Shelter Island, we will. And so the mechanism by which an extension is done will look a lot more like what we do on the mainland. And that is where developers, and I think Lori had pointed out that the word developers was in there, and why is that necessary? But we have a process by which developers pay the actual cost. So if they're developing an area and they need public water, they pay the actual cost for it. If a homeowner needs water, however, we have a system where the homeowner is given a little more flexibility on the cost. They get 75 feet of free water main, and they also they pay what's called our average cost. So developers pay actual costs and homeowners pay somewhat less. And that is in our regulation. So I think we need to clean up the regulation where it, specifically as it relates to Fire Island and Shelter Island, and we will. And like I said, there is a difference. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just looking at, the exhibits, and it references like Lonelyville Fire Island, Davis Park Fire Island, Browns, I don't know if Browns tells the state, but Ocean Bay Park. Like there seems to be a bunch of different Fire Island.
There are, and that's because our Fire Island system grew through acquisitions and leases, just like what we're talking about here today. And each one of them, they were all different. They were, we took a lot of them over from private owners of water systems. And so there were surcharges established in some where they had to pay back a lot of improvements, and some of them they didn't. So there are different rates on Fire Island. But we have one main Fire Island rate, and that's the rate that Shelter Island is being charged.
Okay.
Consumption fee across those different networks, though, Joe, those are the same.
It's very similar. Yep.
It's this unique system characteristics for surcharges and whatnot that are
That's
different.
right.
Consumption fee is the same that we're looking at here on Shelter Island,
Yeah.
just like our surcharge is different than in those other communities.
Right.
All right, and then she also referenced the miscellaneous fees and how she felt that there was representations made that the only fees that were going to be charged are, rates for water usage and, obviously the surcharge. But can you just clarify that the miscellaneous rates apply to everyone across the board, and just discuss a little bit about what that is?
Yes, so there are a lot of different fees that the Water Authority charges for all different services. And so that's what that schedule includes. So yes, everybody has to pay for water, and everybody's going to pay this capital improvement fee or the management fee. But, if someone needs their water shut off on a weekend, or if there's something special that has to be done, we have a list of fees that we charge for those particular items. That's what's in our list. And
So I saw there was like a return check fee. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, they would be paying that.
Yep.
All right, now, is there going to be a fee for the installation of the new water meters, or is that absorbed in the capital improvements?
that's in the
the
capital
list.
improvements.
So that's for existing customers, they won't have to pay additional.
No,
It's
that's
only for- Okay,
right. That's included in the capital improvements, the installation of them, the reconnecting of their services to the water main. Once the new water main is put in, that's all covered under the capital improvements. And I think she had a question also about a fee for like a deposit. We will not be charging the customers a deposit fee.
okay, and then lastly from me is she made references to the West Neck water rules and regulations, and wanted to know whether those are going to carry through to the lease, but they're not, right? Because you don't have an enforcement arm, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so it would have to, like, we have some town code provisions that could come into play, and we would have to enforce those.
Right.
But as far as you, prohibiting certain irrigation and sprinklers, and you can't have those because you can't enforce them.
Right. We will make sure that people know that they're not allowed to irrigate with the system. If we become aware of something, if one of our people are out in the field and they see that someone by chance has got an irrigation system connected to us, we'll let them know. We'll probably let the town know about it too, because the town is in a position to enforce it. But essentially, that's a town ordinance. and the town will be responsible for enforcing it. You know, in the case of the fire hydrant permits that we normally issue on the mainland, we will not allow a permit holder to do anything on Shelter Island. But again, if someone's out there filling a hydrant and a police officer or somebody from the town sees that, you know, we're not everywhere. So I would expect that someone else would either report that to us with a license plate or a permit number, and we'll follow up with the owner of the vehicle, or you can simply stop the people. I mean, again, you have your own law enforcement people. You certainly would be able to do that on your own if you wanted to.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Joe, so again, we'll just fine tune anything we just talked about and we'll have it ready for the meeting. Joe, the only other thing is, I'm gonna need to get in touch with you. Joe Fenora and myself and Jen Messiano, our grant writer, met this morning. And we're gonna meet again next Thursday, so we just like to talk to you before next Thursday.
Yeah, because there is, Jerry, there is a lot of, obviously, you've probably been hearing about it. There's a lot of money that's being made
Yeah.
available for drinking water and systems like this. So, you know, we will certainly work with you on applications for grants.
Right. And again, you know, just Lisa, we went over this. This is to, you know, we're estimating a $1.7 million upgrade, and any grants we get would go directly into that, not into Suffolk County's Water Authority's bank.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Joe, would you be able to hang out a little longer because do we have another agenda item?
Yeah, we have one more.
Yeah, can you just hang out for after that?
Absolutely.
Unless,
Sure.
because we take comments on agenda items after the next
Yeah, we can do
agenda
that.
item.
You know what? Rather than hold Joe up, why don't we take
Okay.
comments from the public now and
Okay.
we'll do what you want to do. Bob?
So I have three questions. One is, suppose over the next 40 years, somebody in, let's say, Hay Beach, let's say it's 5 homeowners, would like to engage with the water authority to help them with the problems or
Suffolk.
whatever. The Suffolk
The way
County,
we were explained is Suffolk County Water Authority needs a commitment from 40% of the area to,
40%
would
of
consider
the
going.
area.
Joe, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so that's typically the way it works. So any area that we would expand into, first of all, we would work with the town and confirm that the town wants to see water expanded into a particular area. If that works for the town and we had the water available, then the process is you start from the point where the water main ends right now and you extend it to those homeowners. And by the time you get to the last homeowner, you count the number of homes there, and under our rules and regulations, you have to have 40% of the people in that new section to participate in order for the water main to be installed.
Okay, so my
What we would
first-
do is we would assess a surcharge on all the homeowners along that route. And it would simply be, you know, if there were 10 homeowners and 4 wanted water, the price of the water main extension divided by 10 would be the individual surcharge. And then 4 of those people would have to pay that surcharge in order for the project to go forward. And then we would connect them up and they would
So
have.
my question was, I only have 3 minutes here. So
Go ahead.
my
I'm
question was, from what I just heard, that you could actually do that without the town's approval. All you have to do is give 60 days notice and the town gets consultation rights, but that the authority could go ahead and do this without town approval.
But he did also say he wouldn't go forward. unless-
Well, but he can go forward.
No, the statute says, yes, he can, absolutely.
So, but the contract,
They can
lets
do
you
it now.
do it anyway.
Correct. That's
With or
the
without
Okay.
That's the reality. Yeah.
Okay.
It's public authorities law Title
Okay.
IV.
Well, suppose there's an area, my second question, suppose there's an area in town, like the one I just described, and there are problems, but they don't want anyone to come in. They want to find their own solution to it. Can the town make them use the water authority to solve a problem that they might have?
No,
No.
No. Okay.
yeah.
Maybe the health
Yeah,
department can do
exactly.
something about it, but the town can't make them use the water authority.
No.
Okay. And my third question is, and maybe I missed this in the discussions that went on in the past over this whole thing, is that I understand that there is expertise on the island, in the Shelter Island Heights area concerning water and water systems. And why wasn't that considered as a way of keeping this within the town?
When we
solving this
first
problem?
discussed this with Suffolk, with the West Neck Water Authority and with the Heights, Stella said that we can help you on a limited
Temporarily.
basis temporarily with our people, but they didn't have no desire to take over the West Neck Water
So we're
system.
talking about weeks, a couple of weeks, where they would assist
Ah.
and help. But
It's
they
not
didn't-
what I
she
understood, but
Um,
maybe I got it wrong.
He was pretty clear with that.
Okay,
It changed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it got modified later.
Yeah, later.
Um,
It was, we were already.
okay.
It also would have been a more expensive proposition ultimately,
Mm.
because we crunched the numbers with Suffolk County Water Authority coming in and then with hiring somebody and the costs and
Right.
associated things. And it ended up being more expensive to
Okay.
run it ourselves.
All right, so just to tie this up, I think there's some concern of some people on the island. This is kind of like a Trojan horse that can bring in an organization with authority to do things without town approval, whether they can do it by contract or not. And these are not elected officials. They can just start solving problems that.
They can do that today by state mandate.
Correct.
but
The
you
only
are-
reason we're having this conversation is because this was a municipally run water supply. So that's why they had to ask us. They wouldn't have to. If this was privately, they can right now go to Shelter Island Heights and take it over.
Okay.
So
So-
now we're negotiating
But
back.
Now you're letting them in and you're giving them.
They're
a
in Deering
footprint on
Harbor.
the
They're
island.
in Deering Harbor already.
Okay.
You don't understand, we're not
Okay.
letting them in. They can come tomorrow.
Okay,
And-
okay.
and
I'm
be
just
here.
making, my point is maybe you're making it a little easier, but anyway, thanks for answering my question.
Thank you.
Joe, can you just chime in real quick as to why it's not a viable option to do a private takeover of the system or have the town continue to do it?
Well, I think it comes down to cost. I think for
Uh,
all the
no.
things that I,
Joe,
I was talking, thank you. I was asking Joe Fenora.
oh, I'm sorry.
All right, no problem.
Too many Joes.
What Joe said was is the same that I would say, and what Amber alluded to also. We examined all of these alternatives. Ultimately, resources and cost were drivers that pointed to the Suffolk County water model as being both the most efficient and cost efficient and practical from long-term sustainability.
Okay. John Curry, you have your hand?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Porkerney just mentioned that there is no irrigation allowed in the district, but there's already a nursery in the district. So I'm wondering, how are you going to get around that?
The nursery has a private well. It's an irrigation well, not connected to Suffolk County, not connected to West Neck Water Authority.
According to your map, it's part of the system.
The building is part of the system. The water is shut off from Suffolk County Water Authority and the landlord put in a irrigation well.
Okay,
Lisa?
understood. A second question I have is, what about homeowners around your well sites that are not using the system or hooked up to the system? Is there some provision in the lease to help them if, for example, your consumption increases and the well uses increases and they're all of a sudden their well is no longer functioning for them? What is there to be done about that as far as this lease contract is concerned?
So that is something that's contemplated in the DEC permits, the New York State DEC permits, and that goes on the mainland also. That the DEC requires that if we do impact someone's private well, that we offer to hook them up. So I think we would operate under the same auspices here, that if we did impact somebody's well, we would have to offer to connect them to the public system.
Would they have to pay for that then?
They would have to pay. I would think so. yeah.
Even though they didn't cause the problem?
I know, it's a good question, John. I mean, I've never been in a situation where we've had to do this in all my years in the water system. So we'd have to take a look and see where these people are. If, as you say, they're close to the well field, then theoretically the cost of connecting them will not be that significant. Obviously, if we are at fault, we need to take responsibility for what we've done. So I think my feeling is the DEC rule indicates that we have to take responsibility for it. So we would probably bear much of the cost of that if it did come up.
And the permitting process puts the burden of showing that you won't impact, you won't have any.
That's
impact
correct.
As part of the application. That's
That's correct.
one of the
Yep.
largest components of the permitting process in itself
Right.
to ensure
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, when you put a well in, you have to demonstrate to the DEC that you're not going to affect water resources in the area, surface water, local wells, et cetera.
And in our case, with the existing system, we don't have any
Yeah.
substantially adjacent parcels that are
Yeah.
not on the system.
And again, I mean, I don't anticipate us pumping any more water out of the ground than we have in the past. We're not, nothing's really changing.
I beg to differ. You have a new restaurant going in on the system.
Yes, you're absolutely right, but the amount of water we're talking about as far as usage goes is very small.
We already know that Crescent Beach uses an inordinate amount of water. You think this other restaurant will not do something similar?
I don't think this restaurant, no, I don't think it will be as significant. I mean, there'll be a user, there'll be a decent sized user. They only have a 1-inch service though. They're really, the rate at which they can take water is very limited.
And
And
Joe,
they're
we
being
also,
restricted to taking water overnight during the off-peak
Right.
periods.
right, they have to have a holding tank and they're gonna.
They have a holding tank,
Water
right?
at night, right. All right. Anybody else have
Okay,
any
thank you.
questions or comments
Ju-
on
ju-
West Neck Water?
Yeah, just one comment too, with the infrastructure improvements, with all the mains being replaced and there's gonna be a lot more water conservation. And we're not gonna have the massive amount, not massive amount, but they're significant
Potential,
leaks.
right.
Yeah,
And
hopefully
we're
that's gonna make a
losing-
difference.
That's gonna make a big difference. So when you say,
Sure.
are we gonna pump more water? No, I think we're gonna pump less water because we're gonna be more efficient with that water, which is huge. And the other thing, the second comment I have is that, thank God for the people that have taken the time, and there've literally been dozens of people that have sent emails in. As it's postponed, moving on this decision by probably 6-8 weeks longer than we wanted to. But from where I stand, where the town board stands, and I think I speak for most everybody here, is they've been good. I mean, the changes that have been made in this agreement have been significant. My 3 biggest concerns were about the additional funding, which I think is now actively going to be pursued with Suffolk County Water, to help fund that infrastructure cost. The second thing is the addressing of the expansion issues, which have been addressed. The other thing about CPF properties, and I think that was well addressed today. So Stephen's comments that our town attorney has made at the beginning of this presentation have spoken to the chief concerns that I had as we move forward. But, Lisa and Adam and Andrew and company, you guys have done a yeoman's job in terms of helping to put this thing together. And it's much appreciated because I think it's a better document today than it would have been 8 weeks ago. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else?
Relatively short question. Who has the final authority if there's a dispute between the DEC and Suffolk County Water?
Well, I'm not sure what type of dispute you're talking about. I mean, we work with the
All right,
DEC
you
all the
decide
time.
You decide you want to expand into a district, and that district has a major golf course, which is the #1 user of water on the island.
Mhm.
And if you want to expand into that district and they want to expand, there's going to be a problem with the water. There's going to be salt intrusion, DEC rules that I assume the DEC has the final authority. It's a simple
Absolutely.
question. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so, so the DEC does have the final authority. Everything that we do when we deal with the DEC is done on an engineering basis where we have to demonstrate to them, to their satisfaction, that we're not going to damage the resource. So yes, they have the
So-
final authority.
So just so everybody understands, the golf course has a DEC permit to pump X amount of gallons of water per year. The town has restrictions on what they can irrigate. Right now, it's what was based on what was there when the irrigation laws went in. And I think the town would have the authority to continue that they can't, even if they hooked up to Suffolk County Water Authority, they couldn't increase what the town allows them to irrigate.
Right, or the DEC would say you got a problem and you can't do it.
Well,
Correct.
no, the DEC, I think, Patrick, right now, the DEC allows them to pump more than we do. You
No,
know, their
I-
permit says they can do more
Believe
than
me,
they're
I
doing.
understand that.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
understand that.
So as long as the town board is,
Yep.
on board that we're not. gonna
Okay,
let
no,
it.
that's helpful because you will find some areas where you're going to have that kind of overlap.
Mhm.
Could be the big farm saying, I want to use more water,
Yep.
I want to expand. And at the same time, the housing groups are thinking,
Yes.
we ought to expand, and they come head to head. Somebody's got to make a decision. So it's a DEC in the end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, so we're gonna fine tune a little bit. I'm sorry?
I just want to say thanks, Joe.
Oh,
for-
yep. Okay.
Yes, thank
Joe,
you,
thank you
Joe.
very much.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
I'll be in touch with you to get together before next week.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Okay, next on the list is we're doing a lot of water-related items today. The wastewater treatment project. Joe Fenora met with the WAC yesterday, the Water Advisory Council, and gave them a heads up on what we were gonna do today. So Joe, you want to walk us through where we are?
Yep, I'm going to share. Can I have screen sharing rights?
I think you have it.
All right, can you guys see this letter here? Is it on the screen?
Can you make it a little bit bigger?
Sure.
Good.
There you go.
Okay, so the purpose of this briefing is just to inform the town board of progress that's been made with regard to site selection and public comments that we've received following the initial engineering report. The town engineering department, myself, and Lombardo Associates reviewed the public comment that we've received with regard to the recommendation to use the Clonawickus Airfield as a treatment and disposal site for the municipal wastewater system. And we reviewed the selection criteria that we used for the initial siting. And we've made changes, some slight changes to the evaluation criteria in direct response to the public comments that we received. So I prepared this brief letter here identifying the existing evaluation criteria that we use for site selection. I'll just walk you through these quickly and then show you what changes that we've made. So when we initially submitted the engineering report, we used these criteria here, that the property for siting the system must be available to the town. We considered CPF sites that weren't blatantly restricted from this type of use. We looked at properties that were wholly owned by the town or other properties that could be acquired in relatively short term. The site also had to be outside of the exceptionally long, 100-year plus groundwater travel time, because we understand that shorter groundwater travel times are advantageous for this type of septic system, or all types of septic systems for that matter. The site had to be suitable in size, shape, grade, and have soil characteristics that would accommodate our system needs. The site had to have suitable zoning, and this relates to the shape of the parcel and the relative setback distances from adjacent uses. The site had to be in the vicinity of its system users to mitigate excess costs and travel from the users to the treatment. Downhill of the users is considered preferable. The need to pump uphill is possible, but represents an added cost and complexity to the system. And the final was that the site would have limited or no downstream groundwater users. So the idea that this would be placed in an area with substantial offset and setback distances between adjacent wells was prioritized. A large portion of these criteria are influenced by our groundwater flow maps and groundwater travel times. I have those as a reference, and I'll switch in just a second, but I want to highlight the updated evaluation criteria, and this is in response to the public comment that we received. The first line item from the existing evaluation criteria was modified so that the property for the site would be wholly owned by the town. We eliminated a search that included CPF sites because primarily of the time that it would take for the change of use procedure. We also included parcels that were either currently for sale or that would be an immediate willing partner to accommodate the installation needs and schedule of the school. We recognize that the public school system is the critical mass in the system. They represent a sizable amount of flow, and because they had plans and partial funding to engage the project independently, we needed to make sure that we could meet a comparable schedule compared to what they could have done on their own. The school has a number of compromised systems now, and that is the main reason why this project has to be completed on an accelerated pace. So with that in mind, we revisited and visited some new sites to be considered for this project. I'll walk through quickly the names of them. In fact, it might actually be better if I switch to one of my maps here. So if you'll see this, this image was included in the engineering report. It's a study that was completed by the U.S. Geological Survey. It's the groundwater travel times from the center moving to the surface waters in the perimeter of the island. The color coding represents longer or slower travel times. Scrolling down here, you'll see generally, with the exception of blue, that's current surface waters. The darker the color, the longer it takes for water to exit our groundwater. And so this whole area along the center of the island, somewhat of a spine that it creates, is the slowest groundwater travel time. Right here, where you'll see this box is located, is the center of our municipal area. This is the more or less the top of 114 right here by the school. And so this really, this data forms the basis for our need to get the effluent out of this area. This is the slowest groundwater travel time, which means what we put in the ground here lasts for the longest amount of time. It's most subject to be picked up by adjacent groundwater users. And so emphasis for moving this system downstream of this slow groundwater travel time all hinges on the data that we have from this map here. I'm going to switch to our GIS system. So the approach generally in reviewing these sites was that
You blow it up a little bit, Joe?
our municipal buildings, for the most part, are centered right here along this circle of North Ferry Road. And we looked in every direction, north, south, east, west, from where the user base would be. So I'm starting down towards the south and to the southwest, looking at parcels in this area. Very few were available for acquisition. In general, both across the southwest and across the southeast, we have a very high density of housing, high density of groundwater users because of all of these new wells. And so both the limited number of parcels that would be available, suitable in size, and also just generally available to us, combined with the fact that there's so many wells and groundwater users to the southeast and to the southwest, made this whole territory not really attractive or feasible for a treatment or disposal of the effluent. You'll notice there's a couple of larger parcels here, but they're all privately owned. And because of the complexity and perhaps unwillingness of the existing owners to participate, we ruled out these larger parcels as well. So effectively, there are no options to the southeast or to the southwest. The only parcel that was in the vicinity here that was considered and was considered as part of the original engineering report was Fisk Field. But because Fisk Field is located right in the center of the groundwater travel times, this particular parcel was deemed to be less desirable. It's also complicated by the fact that there are a number of adjacent wells and groundwater users in the immediate vicinity. In most cases, it's the adjacent parcels. That's also less advantageous. And most importantly, though, the setback requirements that would be imposed on this parcel because of the residential nature of the neighborhood would leave very limited space for the siting of the equipment in Fisk Field. If it could be fit, it would be compromised and limited in its size and potential expansion ability, but also it would likely have an impact in the use of the field. We would need to rearrange its geometry, have to put up potentially some fencing, and the current use of the field as a sports complex would likely be compromised by the addition of this system. So for those reasons, this territory and this region didn't come up with any real suitable options. As we move to the north, we pick up a few really advantageous geographic features. The first is that generally North Ferry Road flows or goes downhill from where the school is to the intersection with Manwaring Road. And so generally, this is an easy approach, low cost and convenient to move effluent downhill. It also provides for a number of parcels that were both either available for sale or wholly town owned, and in one case was privately owned but had a potentially willing partner. I'll start moving from south to north, and the first is that 69 North Ferry Road is wholly owned by the town. So this parcel was considered because of its ownership structure. 87 North Ferry Road was for sale at the time that we began the engineering report. So that was initially considered. However, the sale was completed privately before we had a chance to pursue it further. 75 North Ferry Road adds a parcel size that could have been considered for this project. It is privately owned and would have required a subdivision of the parcel. Ultimately, the geography and the size worked, but the ownership structure was not suitable for our needs. Bouncing back to 69, which I mentioned before, is wholly town owned. This site is a little bit narrow, although we could have potentially made it work. However, the adjacent parcel 99 here, which is also known as Sacham's Woods, has a covenant on the property that it can be used for groundwater use, fresh drinking water wells. And so while that's not currently used by the town, we recognize that this could be a very valuable asset to the town in their efforts to expand either public water service or local water districts. And so we looked away from 69 because of its proximity to a large parcel that's designated for drinking water use. Moving back around this area, we also engage with Sylvester Manor because of their, for obvious reasons, a tremendous amount of space in the area. And while we had very productive talks with the folks at Sylvester Manor, their interest, I think, is very much aligned with the towns and helping to solve some of our critical infrastructure and water quality issues. But ultimately, the relationship between a public entity like the town and the private entity like Sylvester Manor represented too many complex arrangements that would have to be made in short order to accommodate the needs of the school. And so while we appreciate their consideration, we're just unable to make that type of arrangement happen in the time that's allowed because of the school's needs. So what that leaves us with is a parcel just on Manwaring Road, which is 16 Manwaring Road. It's wholly owned by the town. Its location is outside of the 100-year or slow groundwater travel time. It's downhill of the existing users. It's closer than the airfield. It has no downstream groundwater users with the exception of the wells that are on Sylvester Manor. However, all of the wells are outside of the required setback distances. The parcel was considered for 4 housing units when we initially engaged in the engineering report. And for that reason, it was not considered as a viable option when we did our initial study. But circling back now with the modified evaluation criteria, 16 Manwaring Road has fulfilled all of our new needs. And so ultimately, the recommendation from the engineering consultant and the town engineering department is that the airfield still represents a viable option, except that the CPF change of use procedures would need to be implemented immediately. And when faced with the public opposition that we saw during the initial review, we felt that 16 Manwaring Road would be the second most viable option, and when considering the public opposition would become our primary recommendation for the siting and the treatment of the municipal wastewater. A couple of other unique features about 16 Manwaring Road is its proximity to Sylvester Manor. And so the long-term partnership with the Sylvester Manor folks could be quite fruitful. We've had some very interesting discussions about the potential for gray water reuse as part of their own irrigation system. And all of those options, although not considered at this design stage, would be possible simply because of our proximity to their facility. So if in the future we wanted to arrange a partnership like that, we could do so, and the complexity would be minimized simply because we're across the street. The size of 16 Manwaring Road would facilitate the system needs now, and depending on determination from the New York State DEC about our required setbacks, could potentially include space for additional use, and if there was the political will and the public interest in doing so. So this site not only meets our immediate needs in terms of size and shape, it's located in an area that's hydrologically advantageous for this type of use. And the proximity to a potential long-term partner like Sylvester Manor, who could make additional use of our treatment there, either by connectivity or by reuse of gray water, I think makes this site very attractive with very limited conflict. And it's our recommendation to the town board that we advance to the design phase of the project, portions of the project that are already funded at this location.
So either Joe or Stephen, what would be the next step? I mean, it's part of the grant we got and part of the study. Do we just have to say, okay, give us, we'll start working on the design, or do we need a resolution? Or-
Need a resolution. Joe, what is your understanding?
My understanding is that we do not need a resolution, because the resolution that we already have was to commence the study as the scope was stated, which included the design development. We have, as part of our own due diligence and responsibility to the town, given an opportunity intermittently for feedback. We did so when we came to the conclusion of the initial engineering report. I think it's prudent that this information be shared. But I don't believe we need a resolution to proceed with the next phase, which is design development. So I would present this information as I have to the town board, and perhaps reschedule some agenda time next week where we can bring Lombardo Associates back if there's additional public comments. But ultimately, I would like to get moving on this as soon as possible. So if the town board has any questions, I would prefer that we didn't hold them, for another time. We should confront them as they come.
And one of the other things we talked about this, I referenced it earlier, the meeting with the grant writer this morning was, we really would like to get this started because there are time limits on some of these infrastructure grants. So if we can have the design work started, we can apply for it.
Yeah, so I would double down on what Joe said, and maybe at the next work session, bring Lombardo.
Yep.
And, before you make a final decision.
And I think likewise, we'd invite the WAC, the CPF, the Green Options, WQI. I mean, all the committees that have some involvement in this, to be heard.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, comments from the public on this one?
Yeah.
I guess a year and a half ago or so, there was a survey of the town. Whether it was scientific or not, half the full-time population of the town voted on priorities, and they put water quality and supply at the highest priority and affordable housing at the lowest priority. I would think using this space for water as opposed to affordable housing is consistent with what the public needs, and I would support this.
Thank you. Just so everybody understands where the town's board is coming from, we talked about this long and hard because we have plans on paper that actually we were ready to present to the county for housing. But the five of us all, unanimously said that water trumps housing, and we can't work on the housing problem until we make sure we take care of the water problem.
Right.
So it was a very difficult decision because we were really ready to start on the housing on Manwaring Road, but we felt that this had to be done first.
Just a comment or two. Number one, your community feedback is very, very, very important. And I think that was taken into consideration by all of us, 2 months ago when we heard loud and clear from you about the Glenawickas Airport. And hats off to Joe primarily, because Joe put a lot of work into this, weeks on end. And we've been appraised of this as we've been going forward about the pros and cons of each one of these particular properties. So I think your explanation today, Joe, I love the fact that you went to the 4 quadrants, and explained each of the pros and cons of why we chose where we chose. There was a rationale behind this. You kept us abreast on that. We did try seriously moving on 3 or 4 different locations. And in the interest of time, because the school is a major player here, and it's a critical need to clean this mess up in the middle of town to get school on board, is we need to move on this thing. And water does trump the housing thing. The housing situation, though, there's a plan B and a plan C. We have not put that to the bottom of the table. Supervisors have been working real hard with the town board and with the parties to be to try to look for suitable sites. We consider that to be the number 2 priority within this town, and we will continue to work hard to meet that goal. So
Yeah.
hats off to Joe for that explanation. I think you brought us through, all of us learned a little something from your presentation today. And hopefully if it generates good constructive feedback, we always welcome that. But we are very, very serious about moving forward with this project. It is the number 1 priority of the town. Thank you.
Okay. I see Peter Grant just got on. Peter's the chairman of the Water Advisory Council. And Peter, I explained that Joe, went over this proposal with your group yesterday. And
Yes, of course.
Stephen brought up that we'll invite all the committees next week for comment on this. I don't know if you wanted to say anything before then.
Well, given that I just joined the meeting, it's probably inappropriate for me to speak up too much. But again, I'll reserve the right to raise my hand at some point.
Okay, thanks, Peter. John Kerr, I see your hand is up.
Yes, has there been an underground groundwater study of where water would be when it leaves this new site, which direction it's going to be going? Do you have any information on that, Joe?
Yes, it goes to the north.
So that's going then right to where the farm fields are?
That's right.
That doesn't bother you as far as contamination of groundwater and possibly, using of that water by plants that are feeding so many people?
No, not at all. Anything that's discharged below ground would be too far away for transpiration or absorption of vegetation. In fact, Sylvester Manor was very supportive of the idea that they would potentially be able to use some of this water for irrigation to reduce the number of gallons that they're pumping out of their irrigation wells now.
What do you mean by too far away?
Too far away vertically, the water going in the ground would be inaccessible to the plants, for instance, that are growing on the surface.
At what level does that water get discharged?
You're talking about at our facility?
Yes. Yes.
That's something that we'd have to wait and see what our setback requirements are. We could potentially use shallow drain fields for recharging if we have enough space. And if we don't, we'd look to more deeper recharge, which would be as deep as the groundwater table would allow us to go. Certainly beyond the limits of whatever agricultural products would be able to access. Not to mention that the treatment at this level would likely make it immeasurable at a distance as little as across the street.
But the treatment level planned is only for reduction of nitrates, not for any other materials.
No, that's incorrect. It's a comprehensive treatment that includes emerging contaminants.
That's not what was proposed initially. So this is a change now? You've decided to put this other levels?
No, it was proposed initially. We hadn't made a commitment to specifically what contaminants we would be removing because we don't have a flow characteristic yet. But at this stage, and as the previous stage, we would be including treatment for whatever emerging contaminants would be in the flow. And if there was any potential use for gray water, there's a separate set of standards, California irrigation law, that would mandate certain treatment and certain water qualities before that water could be reused again. So there are a number of standards that would have to be met if we did pursue that route.
Will there be released to the public this list of contaminants that will be removed or some details about that process? Because initially all we heard publicly is that it's a nitrate removal system. So I'm interested in the details of the other aspects.
I have to jump in here. No, that wasn't what was initially. Initially, it was that there are these other filters available for whatever contaminants for PFAS right now, but also in the future, if other contaminants should emerge, that this system is capable of expanding without expanding. Just by
That's
adding
correct.
more
Yeah,
modules.
the full advantage of a central opportunity to adapt to treatment needs. And we have always discussed the idea that we would include a range of treatments on an as-needed basis because we had the functionality to do so. The Nitrex system, which has been discussed at length, is specifically targeted to removing nitrogen, but the centralized treatment, the whole plant itself, can have many different facets of treatment. Nitrex is just one component of what would be used for the overall treatment at the facility.
Joe, I think in our discussion with the school, that was one of the biggest selling points is that, if they went forward with their plans, that's the only problem they would be addressing with the nitrates. And with this proposal, anything down, pharmaceuticals, PFAS, anything down the road, we'd be able to take care of.
That's correct.
It also just should be pointed out that while not all of the flow from the town center is heading north, a substantial portion of that flow is already heading north. And of course, it's untreated. So it's in the case of nitrogen, 97% more, or however that math works out, nitrogen currently flowing from town center under Sylvester Manor's property. So this isn't really a change. It's moving the source of that flow short distance closer. So the timing may change a little bit, but fundamentally it's the same groundwater impact.
Mhm. Penny?
Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Nope,
Yes.
yeah, we can hear you. Nope, now you're muted. You just muted yourself. There you go.
Yeah, actually, there is water that does move in that direction, but the majority of the water effluent that is coming out of the center is moving, I think, in many directions, so you wouldn't be substantially cutting back what's necessarily moving to the north. And I have one other concern, and that is that as this water that is moving to the north goes under the agricultural fields of the manor, there are irrigation wells that are in place right now that will be drawing from that. So
Penny, you're
I hope-
absolutely correct. You're
I
absolutely
hope
correct.
that's taken into, it's not a future thing, it's an immediate
Right.
thing.
It's actually something, regardless of whether this facility is developed, that's something that is going on right now. And Sylvester Manor is struggling with the high nitrogen level in the water that they are pulling up presently.
Yeah,
So,
more than nitrogen, I am concerned about the pharmaceuticals and the other chemical toxic.
sure,
things that are in the
nitrogen never
water.
moves
Can
alone.
I please finish? And I do want to be really clear here because I was very involved in the Clennawickus airfield discussion. And when we were told how about that proposal, it was said that in the future, we could add modules on and deal with other toxins. But the initial proposal was only about nitrates.
That's correct.
So just to make things clear. Thank you.
Sure.
I just,
Sure.
the last thing on that is, I think Joe emphasized from the start, the reason we want to get the water out of the center and move it further away is because it sits here the longest. Yeah, the water
I
that we put
also-
in the ground here sits here the longest. So yes, it moves, but it moves at a 50 to 100-year rate as opposed to other portions of the island.
I also have
No, no,
studied
no.
hydrology and water movement in college. And the way it was always taught to me, I've never seen anything to change this, is that the longer it's moving through the soil, the better it is and the more it gets clarified.
Well, You're
Rather
missing
than
my point, Penny. It's
putting
not
it next-
moving, it's sitting there.
No,
It's
let
not
me
moving
finish.
through the
Putting it
soil, it's
next
sitting in the
to
aquifer.
freshwater wetlands and saltwater harbors, it needs to go through land before it gets there, or it ends up in the water. So that's what
Okay.
I was taught when I studied.
Right,
Earth
so
systems.
so
All right.
certainly,
Thank you, Penny.
certainly the current system, the current proposal does not move this water all that far.
No.
It's coming just outside of the center and into a longer flow period, far longer flow period than if we were going to Clennawickus. So it will still have quite a bit of ground to travel under. Nevertheless, you might very well be better served by moving some of that gray water beyond the intake areas of Sylvester Manor, so that the human drinking water is not being affected by this water at all.
Thanks, Peter. Joe, you want to just fine tune what I said about the water sitting in the aquifer?
Yeah, travel time is very relevant to the groundwater users. If what you put in the ground has contaminants in it and you continue to add more and more of that into the ground, it piles up if it's not going anywhere. And so when you add nitrogen rich or whatever contaminant of your choice is into the ground, and you do it on a constant basis, like we do with septic systems, if the groundwater doesn't go anywhere, then the concentration of what you're putting into the ground continues to rise. And that's exactly why we have an increasing level of nitrogen across our island. We are putting in more nitrogen than the island can naturally discharge on its own. So we need to reduce the amount of nitrogen that we put in the ground, or we need to reduce the amount of nitrogen contaminated water that we put in the ground. The systems that we are pursuing now, either through IA system technology or through this centralized treatment plant, reduces the amount of nitrogen that we are putting in the ground. It treats it, removes it from the water. We continue to put more and more water in the ground through our septic systems, but these technologies strip the nitrate and any other contaminants. So if you are an adjacent well user, and you certainly don't want the nitrogen levels to increase, you want the water to pass through and refresh itself as quickly as possible. This area in the center of town has very, very, very slow groundwater travel times. So what we put in the ground here lasts for a long time, and we continue to put more and more and more on top of it each day. And so if you look towards areas with faster travel times, then you don't have to worry about the contaminant levels increasing with such rate. If the water beneath your feet moves out of the way, by the time you put more in tomorrow, then you have less nitrogen coming up in your drinking water wells. And I'm not sure, there's been so much conversation here about hydrogeology. I'm not sure which other items you want me to address, but generally
Oh, that was
speaking,
good. That was
once
good.
the nitrogen hits the water table, there is no reduction of nitrogen. There's no more natural processes that reduce nitrogen.
And let me just remind that it's three parts per that the system is putting out.
Right.
It's probably less than what Sylvester Manor is pumping out of the
Oh,
ground
it certainly
now.
was. Yeah.
So it's an improvement, this wastewater. That's number one. Number two, Jim, I want to say, and whoever used that word trump, that, water trumps housing. I think they can go hand in hand. I
Sure.
really do. I mean, I don't think we have to give up one for the other. And in fact, if we get a handle on the water,
No, I agree with
on the contaminants, if we get a handle on this, housing, I think, follows, just sort of easier with the blessing of the Suffolk
Yeah.
County Water.
Yeah,
I mean,
on a large scale, you're
Department of Health.
100% correct. Just on this particular property, a tough
Right,
decision had
yeah.
to be made. And we went with
But
the
it might
priority.
open other doors in the future.
Absolutely.
Not might,
One should
yeah.
complement the other.
Right.
It sets the
So-
stage for some infrastructure to support
Yes.
the rest.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So Joe, the next step is we'll invite PO here next week from Lombardo Associates. We'll invite the town committees. The Gazette and the Reporter will report it. So we'll invite the public to come and we'll talk next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay. Gordon?
Good afternoon.
Nice to see everybody smiling here today, particularly I'm smiling today, okay? I just, a couple of brief statements and probably some of them have already been addressed to my liking, okay, today, okay? But one of them is on behalf of the Community Preservation Board. I would like to thank the town board for the decision of choosing the different location for the municipal water treatment facility. That goes really, thank you very much, okay? This is probably, I think you've addressed it already earlier, but let me just make this comment, okay? We're hoping that this decision not to use Glenowickus Airport symbolizes the town board's desire to honor the agreements under which lands that have been, honor the agreements under which the lands have been both acquired and preserved. And I think that you already indicated, okay, is that you talked about town property, wholly owned land, town property. Okay, so that's basically all I have to say, but thank you for reconsidering it, okay? And hopefully things move forward and we get a new treatment system here, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll continue this next week. That's all that's on the agenda. We'll go around the room for board member reports. Meg?
Nope. I don't have anything.
All right, very quickly, just two items. The PEP, which is the Peconic Estuary Partnership. Since I've taken over the last month, the chairman of local government, and we keep echoing the need for additional monies to get these projects up and going. PEP is now designated a separate meeting, first time ever, strictly to task the 5 East End towns to be able to bring their grants writers and other personnel to a separate meeting that would addresses how best to get access to this money. And that goes for, whether we're talking West Neck Water, we're talking, Heights Treatment Plant, the Fresh Pond, or the wastewater, or Real Point, or any of the other projects that we're working on. Most of the funding that they've pointed us to recently have been for huge things like bridges and internet, tunnels, and a lot of stuff for DOT, but spanning highways, spanning 3 or 4 states. We don't qualify for that. So there's billions of dollars out there. And my cry to them was how do you reduce this to simply, how do you help fund Real Point? How do you help fund Fresh Pond and West Neck Water and these issues? We're not talking interstates here. We're talking about key projects for this community that need funding. So that's really what we're going to cover. And we're committed to that end to get that done. Currently, Peconic Estuary Partnership is working on 12 different projects in the Peconic Estuary, one of which is here on Shelter Island, which I can report on at a later date. It has to do with a tidal impact at South Ferry. And there's we'll be able to see the impacts of sea rise and tides on the marshlands and that surround Shelter Island. So that's pretty exciting. The last thing we have is we have a special program set up, Mr. Supervisor, for Wednesday, May 11th. It's a rain date of Friday, May 13th. This is for our seniors. This is at Camp Winnipeg. They will arrive at 10 o'clock in the morning. We will check them in. We'll take a photo of all our participants. Right now, it looks like we're working on a couple of dozen people that might be part of that program. We're going to give 10:30 a history of the camp. We're going to do some decorating picture frames, for the seniors.
Who's we?
We are, this is the Recreation Committee and the Winnipeg people are doing this.
So we're at a PUP.
Yeah, we're out of
You
PA.
just-
Oh,
you
okay.
just
No, I
moved on.
I just- No, this is,
Okay.
this is something.
Yeah, Pep isn't doing this.
No, Pep is not doing it. We're also corroborating with the high school and library to record some interviews for senior crafts and for future senior crafts. We're going to do a cookout for the seniors at 11:30. We're taking a look at those dietary restrictions right now. I'm going to speak, I'm going to do a little bit on photography and get them out
Nice.
into nature and bring
Mhm.
nature to them. At 1:30, we're going to do a music presentation with campfire and some s'mores and things of that nature for them. So it's going to be like a
Nice.
3-hour program
Yeah.
for the seniors.
Pray for good
We're
weather.
looking to expand that
What day of the
role.
week is that?
That was Wednesday,
Oh,
May
nice.
11th, with the rain date of May 13th, which is Friday. We're trying to get this done before Memorial Day,
Mhm.
where the camp is available to us.
Very nice.
So it'll be a nice program that's set up there. That's it for me.
Good. Amber,
I don't have anything to.
Gee.
you've been a little busy with the taxes?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I went to a community housing board meeting on Thursday, but that was long ago and far away.
Right. Okay. EJ?
Yep, WAC yesterday. As usual, a good meeting, well run. Water levels are good. National drought predictions have dropped for our area. In other words, less probability of a drought this year. Great, great. Also starting the investigation of maybe we want to think about lessening the restrictions on geothermal heating and cooling. But at very early stages here, we're going to attempt to just get a couple of speakers in for edification and just keep plugging away at it to see if it's possible.
So we'll wait for the WAC to say they want to make a presentation.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And they're months away from that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a serious thing. I mean, it would be, it's great for the greater world. I mean, the earth. For us to do this. However, we don't want it to be damaging Shelter Island.
Yeah, one of the things that the WAC did 2-3 years ago was the drought restrictions.
Mhm.
And it was really very comprehensive. I mean, well done.
Yeah.
Town board, we never really adopted,
Right.
those measures.
Right.
We need to resurrect them, even though the forecast is for a lot of rain, perhaps.
You're saying to
should
have it in place before
Have it
the
in place
emergency.
beforehand. We should always have those drought emergency things ready to go.
Yeah.
And it was well done. They wouldn't be starting from scratch. I think that the document's almost ready to go.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe Greg, I can talk to Greg Toner, I think about that. I also wanted to say that Meg and I met with Reed and Nanette.
Nanette, yeah, I just remember
last
that.
week,
I
Right.
remember that. Right.
Go.
I did do that.
We're just trying to get, as part of the comprehensive plan, we're in the cultural historical area right now, just to try to sort of start to pay attention to the historical buildings and significant buildings may not be so historical, but because of who designed them, or they may be something worth taking care of. But I don't want to come across as heavy-handed. I think it's more an idea of inventorying, knowing what we have, and educating the public as to the specialness. But, from further discussion.
And while I'm looking at you, I'm thinking of your husband. So I'm thinking fire department would like to.
Oh,
thank
he's
the-
a classic.
The women's auxiliary, the women's auxiliary that put together hundreds of people that came to the field down at
Oh,
Burns
yeah.
Road.
Yeah.
And they did the Easter egg hunt, did a great job, and thank you very, very much. Kids really enjoyed it a lot. And also special thanks to the fire departments, both here and in Greenport, for the response that they showed yesterday here on the island for a very serious house fire that it took a lot of guts, people getting up on roofs of a house that was totally engulfed in flames. A lot of courage and, hats off to the
Yeah.
firemen,
It's a tough.
do a great job. Thank you.
Anything else, BJ?
No, I think I'm done.
Stephen, you have anything?
No, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Anybody in the audience?
I have a question.
Comments? Who is it? Julia.
Julia.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go
Go ahead, Julia.
Hi, so the decision about CPF lands regarding this particular project, is it just regarding this particular project? I'm thinking about the Fresh Pond study and opportunities there for improving the quality at Fresh Pond, both of which I think options involved CPF land potentially.
We're doing our homework on this and we're waiting for the 5 East End towns to reconstitute the advisory committee so we can ask, and we've also been in touch with Gordon and his group to, maybe we'll look at, future uses for some of the lands that are water related.
So it's
And the
specific to this property, but to this project, but not necessarily to others.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an open discussion.
Okay, great.
And
Thanks very
WAC is, Julia, just so you know, WAC was meant to get to Fresh Pond this week, but we ran out of time. So hopefully that'll be be moved forward to the next agenda so that we can talk about the study and the possibilities of where to site the solution.
Great, thanks. And then one other question having to do again with the sewage treatment project, and that is Sylvester Manor obviously is a large neighbor, but there are many other neighbors in that area. And is there a plan to invite neighbors specifically into the discussion?
Well, anybody's invited to the work session next week, and we're not going to call people up, but well, hopefully you and the reporter will report it and word will get out, and anybody that wants to come and talk to us is more than welcome.
Great, thank
And
you.
Julia, it's wastewater, it's not sewage.
Wastewater, thank you.
Sounds better.
Treated.
Treated wastewater.
It's like dump recycling center.
I know.
you know?
Words matter.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I do have one quick question.
Yes.
Yes, you have to.
There was some question about what West Neck Water was. We are not we were never a water district, and then we were deemed a water improvement district. So legally, what is West Neck Water District? If you're going to put it in legal terms, what are we? Because I don't think that question's ever been
Well,
firmed.
once the town took it over, you were town run. So there was no district or improvement district, and they allowed the advisory board to stay on, as a committee of the
Right.
town. So there is nothing right now.
I'm talking about the physical area.
The
It's not
geographical boundaries.
the geographical boundaries. It's not a district. It's not a water improvement area, and it doesn't matter what we are. Is that correct?
It's a system. It's a water system.
Yeah,
It's a system. All right, I just looking for clarification on that because, yes. All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna,
Yeah, I do have a question for Joe.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, just yesterday when you spoke to WAC, you mentioned that there was some interest from Sylvester Manor, and I realize there's nothing firm on the table yet, but in doing something about housing and possibly working out something that could be in combination. Is that off the table now, or was it?
No,
It's not
not
off
at
the
all.
table.
And, I think my reference yesterday was just simply to the Sylvester Manor broader comprehensive plan. They have a number of initiatives that their own entity has formed, and there's opportunities for partnership in many of those. I would defer to the Sylvester Manor board there for a comment as to particularly what they could see the partnership look like. But on our end, obviously, it's with regard to connectivity of the system or for water reuse.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, last chance, anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion. We go into executive session to talk about our ongoing litigation and a personnel issue.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.